Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the May 2022 meeting of the Montgomery County Civic Federation. Welcome. We're going to take care of some Federation business before we get into our program this evening. The first thing we'd like to do is approve the agenda, which is on page 2 of the newsletter. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? It's been first, it's been seconded. Let's have some discussion. I'd like to add an item to the agenda, which is the consideration of an emergency resolution having to do with the Office of the People's Council. So with that addition, all those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The next order of business is the approval of the minutes of the April 11th, 2022 general meeting via Zoom. Those minutes are on page 10 of the May newsletter. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
So moved.
Seconded?
Seconded.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Thank you very much. Are there any announcements for the membership? Anybody have anything that's coming up that they'd like to share with us at this point in our meeting? Not seeing anything. Nobody's raising their hand. If you do think of something at the end of the meeting, that would be another appropriate time to do that. Our treasurer's report. Jerry, do you have a treasurer's report?
Yes, I have a treasurer's report as of May 9th, 2022. For the last 30 days, we've gotten $50 in dues. And for the basically, I call it the 10 months on the fiscal year starting July 1st, we've collected $1,537 worth of dues. And we've had $1,437 worth of expenditures, giving us a net income of $99 for the period. And our current bank balance is $9,088. If there are any questions, either give me a call or speak to me later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Louis. Nice to see you. And Sheldon is coming in. Nice to see him as well. Let's get right into our program for this evening. It's a discussion of the state of the environment in Montgomery County, and organizing this program is former Civic Federation President Bailey Condrey. And Bailey, over to you.
So we're going to start with Ken Bawer, who's going to give us a look at how the stream restoration work being performed by the Department of Environmental Protection, because they are being required to do so to meet the MS4 permits. Ken's gonna give us a little real-time news about this program.
Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Just one clarification or correction what Bailey said. It's not just DEP, it's DEP and parks, number one. Number two, there's no requirement to do stream restorations, as I'll clarify. So my name is Ken Bawer. Thanks very much for your time. A bit about my background. I'm the immediate past president of the West Montgomery County Citizens Association. I'm a current member of the Montgomery County Water Quality Advisory Group appointed by County Executive Elrich. I'm rejoining the board of the Maryland Native Plant Society. I'm a longtime volunteer Montgomery Parks Weed Warrior supervisor and was certified as a Maryland Master Naturalist. But to be clear, I'm not speaking on behalf of any of those organizations tonight. So I have three different alternate titles for this presentation. First one is Stream Restorations, the Inconvenient Truth, with apologies to Al Gore. The second is Crimes Against Nature, harsh words, but I think you'll agree with me by the end of this presentation. And finally, the greenwashing of stream restoration. Because of its misleading name, it's understandable that many people misunderstand this subject and support so-called stream restorations without really knowing the full truth. I mean, after all, with a name like stream restoration, what could possibly be bad, right? This is the background photo is taken by Rod Simmons. It's a so-called stream restoration project in Alexandria, and it's an example of the terrible damage that's done by when heavy equipment and chainsaws are used in our natural areas. I'm going to cut right to the chase in case you get bored. By the end of the presentation, most people ask, well, so what can we do? So let me just tell you right up front, I'm asking you to contact your elected officials at the county, state, and federal level and ask them to introduce a bill to ban stream restorations. This is not a radical position. We banned DDT, we banned thalidomide, we banned lead and gas, we banned lawn pesticides in Montgomery County. So this presentation will explain why this is so important. This background picture is a so-called stream restoration in a Montgomery park, if you can believe it, and it shows the destruction caused by these projects. This huge tractor is sitting where the stream used to be, and I'll tell you a little bit later on what happened to the stream. So what is a stream restoration? Stream restorations are construction projects, pure and simple. And there are several different types of stream restorations, but the most common ones are engineering projects done to try to stabilize eroding streams by using heavy equipment, such as the excavator shown here, to modify a stream channel. And this typically involves a mix of straightening or changing a stream's natural meander pattern, placing heavy boulders to armor plate sections of the stream, as shown here, scraping away stream bank soil, using soil stabilization mats that may or may not be biodegradable, dumping fill material in the stream to raise its level, or even filling in the stream channel completely and moving it to a different location. So why are stream restorations done? The primary reason stream restorations are done by Montgomery County and Montgomery Parks is to meet their MS4 permit, although as I said before, they are not required to be done. MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, and an MS4 permit is required for jurisdictions that have separate pipes for stormwater than for their sewer system. The MS4 permit system is an effort to clean up the Chesapeake Bay by reducing the amount of sediment, nitrogen, and phosphorus, those three things that enter the bay from point sources. And the point sources in this case are the stormwater pipes that dump into streams. So the inconvenient truth, contrary to the propaganda and greenwashing by the multi-billion-dollar stream restoration industry and their government enablers, is that stream restorations don't actually restore anything, not the streams themselves, either physically or biologically, and especially not the whole ecology of the entire construction site, which is always way beyond the stream itself, as you can see here. This is a so-called stream restoration in Chevy Chase at Audubon Natural Society, of all places. It is not restored to look like any natural stream that probably anyone has ever seen. This area used to be fully wooded. And the rhetorical question is, how are fish and salamanders and other aquatic organisms supposed to move up and down this so-called restored stream? And the streamside plant community was totally wiped out. So just to be clear, I am in no way opposed to infrastructure protection or repair projects, such as protecting undercut roads or exposed sewer lines, as shown here on the left and in the middle. These are necessary infrastructure repair projects. These are not stream restorations. And note, if you do an infrastructure repair project like one of these, they don't get MS4 permit credit. Why? Because Maryland Department of the Environment, or MDE, says these are not stream restoration projects like daylighting buried streams and removing concrete culverts. They're admirable projects, but they aren't considered stream restoration projects by MDE, and they get no MS4 permit credit. These are photos of the Falls Reach Stream Restoration Project in Potomac. Before on the left shows a perfectly fine natural stream. Yeah, there's a bit of erosion, as all natural streams have, and no urban or suburban stream in Montgomery County is in pristine condition. The small inserts in the middle show some of the heavy equipment that's used, that was used for this project. And I took all these photos, except for the one on the left. And the after photo on the right shows that the stream restoration completely destroyed the forest community in its footprint by scraping the forest floor bare. They destroyed the natural character of the stream by straightening it out, armor plating sections with stones, creating artificial rock dams that block the movement of aquatic organisms. Here's another example of the utter destruction caused by so-called stream restorations. This one's in the city of Rockville. This is the Upper Watts Branch. This is the Whetstone Run project in Bloom Park in Gaithersburg. And again, a before and after, and note the total environmental destruction and the large equipment that they used in the middle. This is the Solitaire Court stream restoration, so-called stream restoration in Gaithersburg. On the left, standing at this same location before the construction, none of those homes were visible through the Narian, riparian, or streamside forest. And on the right, you can see that the former forest is now, what, a pile of logs. This is another view of the Solitaire Court project, a little further downstream. Again, this was a fully wooded natural area. These are before and after pictures of the Tacoma Branch restoration. Again, you can see the natural character of the forest has been totally wiped out. This was a fully wooded section of Long Branch Stream Valley Park in Tacoma Park. This one was done by Montgomery Parks, and it was this section of stream was converted into an engineered stormwater conveyance. I recently learned that our director of Montgomery Parks is an engineer, so that explains a lot. Engineers are in control of these projects. Once stormwater is controlled upland, before it gets into streams, the major source of erosion can be eliminated. And after this, it's common sense that eroded gullies and stream banks will self-recover and self-stabilize if you can control the stormwater before it can get into the stream. So these are pictures from a scientific study that actually documents that this happens. I'm going to go through these real quick, and if we have time, I can go back and answer questions, but I will leave you with the presentation. And this is, I have some slides like this one that is a reference to that scientific paper. As I alluded to previously, to add insult to injury, stormwater is not being controlled at its source. And all of these stream restorations fail or will fail, especially given the more intense storms that we expect due to global warming. Some examples. Picture on the left is a Joseph's Branch stream restoration in Kensington, showing how the large boulders that were used to stabilize the stream bank are being totally ripped out of place. All these are being dislodged by the uncontrolled stormwater that hasn't been controlled at its source. And the insert at the bottom left shows the same location during a rainstorm, and you can see the kind of water we're talking about because it hasn't been controlled. Picture on the right is Cabin Branch in Bethesda, showing how the uncontrolled stormwater has just eroded out behind the stream bank, behind the armor plating, just renders it completely useless. This shows a blown out armor plating along Long Branch in Tacoma Park. This is a blowout of the Snake Den Branch stream restoration in Potomac. Same deal. This is the Lower Booze Creek stream restoration in Potomac. The original project cost $700,000. Almost as soon as they built it, sections were getting blown out by the uncontrolled stormwater, and the repairs cost an additional $3.6 million. Total waste of our taxpayer money, like throwing money in the trash can. So I've shown you pictures of the collateral damage done to forests when heavy equipments run through our natural parks and natural areas, but the stream restoration corporations and the government sponsors, they say, oh, don't worry, we're gonna plant some trees and shrubs when we're done. Well, after the construction's done, trying to replant a forest is like trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. You just can't do it. These are just some examples of the plants and small animals that are destroyed because they can't run faster than the bulldozers. And what happened, and these are all pictures I took in Montgomery County, actually on my property. So what happened to the fish? Well, a lot of these projects, the entire Falls Reach stream was pumped through the black pipe you see during construction. And according to a USDA National Engineering Handbook about stream restorations, they say, quote, aquatic life would be either prevented from passing the project reach or pulverized by the pumps, unquote. Stream restorations cut forests, and I'm pretty sure you know that cutting forests promotes global warming since the trees can no longer absorb carbon dioxide. This is called carbon sequestration. In the past 5 years, Montgomery County stream restoration has destroyed at least 2 million square feet. I say at least because they refuse to give us the data. And there are additional lost ecosystem services that are listed here. These are not even considered. Montgomery County DEP and the industry representatives say that stream restorations are cheaper and that upland stormwater control is just too expensive. Well, we need to tell our elected officials that our few remaining natural areas are priceless, even if they aren't pristine, and saving our natural areas outweighs saving money, as the graphic suggests. So what does the scientific literature say about the effect of stream restorations on stream biology? The literature shows that the results of stream restorations rarely, if ever, show evidence for biological improvement for aquatic organisms. I've shown a couple pictures in the bottom, benthic macroinvertebrates and fish. And so for your future use, here are the papers that I reviewed to back up that statement. So to understand the importance of stream restoration alternatives, first we have to appreciate the root cause of the major stream erosion, which is the stormwater from impervious surfaces like the roads and roofs. So this slide just gives an example, shows how uncontrolled stormwater from the roads and roofs, for example, flows into the storm drains in the middle, and then fire hoses through stormwater pipes and into our streams. Stream restorations do nothing to control the stormwater volume before it gets into the stream. So what exactly are the alternatives to stream restoration? All of the alternatives are included in MDE's accounting guidance document, as it's called. And here's a link to it in the cover page. It gives a long list of all the alternatives that can be used instead of stream restorations to very well meet the MS4 permit. And I'm going to show you two extracts from that document. I'm not going to go through these, but I just want to show you that in that document, these tables show all of the practices, all the practices for non-destructive stormwater control. And I'm going to show you some examples of what these look like in a minute. All of these are non-destructive alternatives. The only destructive practice in this whole list is stream restoration, which is pointed to by the red arrow, which I call the nuclear option. And this is another table from the same document, more of the list that shows all the non-destructive practices that can be used instead of stream restoration. So I'm going to show you some examples of what these look like. This slide shows a few examples of the non-destructive alternatives which control stormwater before it enters the streams. And this will then remove the root cause of stream restoration, of stream erosion in our urban and suburban areas. In the upper left is shown a bioretention, as it's called, where the cement curb is cut and stormwater from the road is diverted into planted depressions where the stormwater soaks into the soil and is typically planted with native plants. Next to it is a grass swale, which is the same thing without any plants. Permeable paving is shown in the lower left. Converting lawns to conservation landscaping is shown in the bottom middle. Green roofs on the upper right, and planting trees on the bottom right. And this is just a small subset of the tables that I showed you. This is another example. This is a bioretention that takes water from the parking lot and the roofs at universities at Shady Grove. These are for your future reference, references that talk about these non-destructive stormwater control practices. So one of the objections that I get from local officials and the stream restoration industry is that there simply isn't enough land for upland stormwater control, but they never give any evidence to back that up. All you have to do is open your eyes to see locations for upland stormwater control almost everywhere. This is an example. This actually is in Bailey's neighborhood in Kensington. This whole median could be a huge, beautiful bioretention filled with native plants to take the water off the streets. And every house could have a bioretention or a rain garden in the front to take even more stormwater from the street, like the images, sample images on the side. So in summary, this is a list of reasons to oppose these so-called stream restorations. Number one, stream restorations don't restore streams either physically or biologically. They import foreign material such as rocks, boulders, and fill dirt into streams, and they destroy riparian or streamside forests and ecosystems in their footprint. This complex web of nature can't be recreated by planting a few trees. Number two, stream restorations don't address the root cause of stream bank erosion, which is stormwater fire hosing into streams from impervious surfaces like roads and roofs. As a result, stream restorations are being blown out across our region. Number three, the science tells us we should be protecting our forested areas since they counteract global warming by carbon sequestration, even if they aren't in pristine condition. And lastly, number four, the way to fix streams is to fix the problem at its source, to control stormwater outside of streams by non-destructive practices such as rain gardens, bioswales, permeable pavement, tree plantings, etc. So finally, to repeat my call to action, I ask you to contact your elected officials at all levels of government here in the county, the state, the federal, and ask them to ban these so-called stream restorations. So that's what I have, and I'd be happy to take questions now or whenever Alan would like.
That was fantastic, Ken. Bailey is managing this program, as you know, or I think you know, and the Civic Federation is part of the group, the Stormwater Partners. And I know that there's been a big debate within Stormwater Partners about keeping the water upland and the stream restorations. Can you close the PowerPoint and address that issue about the debate within Stormwater Partners and which way you think that's going?
I'm intimately familiar with that debate. I was co-chair along with Kit Gage of a Stormwater Partners Network working group to try and come up with a position on stream restorations. And the way it shook out was that we had to agree to disagree. Some people are in favor of stream restorations, and some people like me are adamantly opposed to stream restorations. I will say that the people that are in favor, everyone, including the people that are in favor of stream restorations, they all agree that we should be controlling at least some of the stormwater upland, as it's called, out of the streams before it can get into the stream. So we agree on that. But where my disagreement is that number one, if you do control the stormwater out of the streams, then there's absolutely no reason to do these stream restorations. And the other way I look at it is if you both do upland stormwater control, and then you follow that up with, or in parallel, do a stream restoration, then you've destroyed the stream. So what's the point? I mean, so I control the stormwater upland. So
can you remind me what are the objections to, or the advocates for stream restoration as you presented them in this excellent PowerPoint presentation? Why are some of those people, so in favor of stream restoration as opposed to the rain gardens, the rainscapes, and the permeable surfaces?
Well, so let me talk to two groups, at least initially, the industry and then the county and the parks. From the industry, this is an extremely profitable business. This is a stream restoration business. It's $1 billion industry, $1 billion business. And these projects are the gifts that keep on giving, because like I said, and I showed you pictures of, these projects get blown out. Why? Because the source of the stormwater isn't being controlled. And guess what? The standard industry guarantee on these projects is 1 year. So if you think about getting a 1 year storm or a 10-year storm or a 100-year storm, I know it doesn't mean, a 100-year storm doesn't mean it's only going to happen once in 100 years. It means that a 100-year storm, there will be a 1% chance of getting a 100-year storm in any year. But the point is that a 100-year storm or a 10-year storm can happen at any point. And these projects are only guaranteed for a year. So guess who pays the bill after the first year? It's the taxpayers. So the stream restoration industry loves these things. So what about the county and the parks? They have said that one of the main reasons they do these is because it's one of the cheapest way to meet the MS4 permit. In other words, to make up an example, if you're trying to control the stormwater runoff from 1 acre, they say it's a lot cheaper to do a stream restoration where all that water gets funneled into than to do all the rain gardens and the bioswales and the bioretentions, et cetera, et cetera. Number one, I think their statement and their data is bogus. They tried to, when I questioned them on this, and they presented this to the Water Quality Advisory Group that I'm a member of, and I said, well, where did you get the data that stream restoration are cheaper? They said, well, we got the data from our last MS4 permit. These MS4 permits are reauthorized every 5 years. So we just had a new MS4 permit authorized last November. So that starts the clock on the 5-year cycle. But so they said they got the data from the previous 5-year MS4 permit. And then the guy who from DEP who answered the question, he said, well, what we did was we looked at the small number of upland projects, and we and from that small number, we calculated that it would be very, very expensive to do many more of those. So I said, well, what that means is that if you had gotten a bid for the huge number of upland projects that would take to actually do the job, the price would have come down due to economies of scale. And he said, oh yeah, well, that's of course. So that's why I say their figure, when they tell you that the upland projects are more expensive, that's a bogus figure. I'm willing to, even if for sake of argument, let's say that these upland practices are more expensive. I still say, what do we as citizens want? I personally am willing to pay more, to not destroy our natural areas. That's, other people may not feel the same way. But so, answer that question, it's both, but DEP says one of the big reasons they use stream restorations are because it's a lot cheaper. Now they don't exclusively do stream restorations to meet the permit. And for the last permit, they about 50% of the credits were from stream restorations and 50% were from other projects. And they say it's going to be about the same for this next go round as well. So I will say they know how to do the upland projects, and when they do them, there's those green street projects that I showed the pictures of. They do them really well. They just need to, increase the number they do by orders of magnitude.
Paul, I saw your hand up. If you've got a question, please come in. But Carol Ann, while we have you here, do you have any experience with Prince George's County's policy and practice regarding stream restoration?
George's is in a slightly different situation, and that huge amounts of the stream system in Prince George's were channelized and concreted back in the 60s. So we have all of that to deal with. And then there are stream restorations done. Most of the ones that I'm familiar with, at least the ones that have been from Department of the Environment where I work, are paired with upland project. Now, is that to say that every iota or every acre has been treated? Probably not. But I think one question I would have about the notion of banning stream restoration is I would not like to throw out the baby of the kinder, gentler techniques, like using live stakes and fascines, because there are many banks that are well eroded, even if you turn off the tap, by a reasonable expectation to stabilize on their own within our lifetimes. But I guess what I'm suggesting is that there are some techniques that don't require the big equipment, and they don't require completely re-engineering the stream. And I just throw that out there, that I would want to be clear about that, because I don't think that those things are necessarily bad things.
Well,
Ken?
Well, so what I would say about, the stream banks self-stabilizing in our lifetime, the picture, and I went flashed by the slide pretty quickly, but you can go back and look at it. They have the before and after picture was a 5-year time span, and they do show this. The bank is already starting to self-stabilize. And the other thing that can be done is things like that can be augmented by plantings, to kind of jumpstart the natural vegetation that would come in.
Yeah, that's essentially what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Is planting the banks. You don't necessarily have to engineer the banks, but planting the banks, live stakes or sticks of trees that will actually root. You put them out when they're dormant and they will root into the ground. Fascines are bundles of material like that. And then you do afforestation and you do ground layer plantings. So, and occasionally, again, it depends on the stream system and what kind of an energy dynamic and gradient it has. You know, perhaps you place some woody debris intentionally to provide pools and riffles and habitat and refugia. It's a very big kettle of fish. And do I think that most of the agencies tend to do a good job when they're doing it? No, I would agree that there's a lot of bad stuff going on. But I know that of other examples where, as I said, these kinds of techniques can really help on a fairly quick timetable. And particularly if they're coupled. You know, as you said, I'm not at all debating that we need to control upland.
Well, what I found intriguing about your remarks, Carol Ann, was that you said that the stream restoration projects, the big ones, are often paired with upland projects. And Ken, I'm wondering, do we do that in Montgomery County? Do we have a policy that pairs the upland control of stormwater with the larger projects?
Well, I would say sometimes it's done and sometimes it's not. I think DEP now recognizes, and maybe they did all along, that they do need to do more upland stormwater control, and they've got a big, a fairly new GIS project where they can overlay all the streams and the impervious surfaces, and they can look at and highlight areas where upland stormwater control has been done. So their line now is that they will concentrate stream restorations on areas where upland stormwater control has already been done or will be done, you know, paired with a stream restoration. Now, whether they're going to do it before or after, I don't know, but I still maintain that, you know, if you put a gun to my head and said, well, do you want to use a bulldozer or bring in, you know, some natural, you know, log materials and try and stabilize? I say, okay, we'll bring in the, you know, the natural materials. The kind of the phrase people are using is wood is good. I mean, that certainly is better, but I would still argue that that's just all going to get blown out if you don't control the stormwater upland. And once you control the stormwater upland, then there's no point in really, you know, doing any at least a major project and you know, in the stream valley itself. And the problem is to get some of the big logs in there that I've seen on some of the other projects up in Maine, as an example. I mean, you need some heavy equipment just to get those, you know, to you know, muscle those big logs in place. So yeah.
So part of the discussion is about controlling stormwater, which should be the bigger part of the discussion. And there are really easy ways to do it. One of the slides that Ken showed is a street in Parkwood. It flows directly to Rock Creek. It is hundreds of yards long. The median that he showed could have best management practices installed without even using heavy equipment. It could be a chain of rain gardens up and down the length of the street where we are witnessing, that's the very street right there, from where that stormwater culvert sits, the street goes for hundreds of yards uphill. There are home renovations occurring on that street. Concrete driveways are being constructed. Houses that have typically not had basement flooding issues are having flooding issues because of the home renovations. So this street, this section of the street, with all of these beautiful trees, they're cup oaks, they would all benefit from having some simple stormwater practices installed in the median. And we brought this to DEP's attention. We brought this site to their attention. We brought another site to their attention, which is within walking distance of Kensington Parkwood Elementary School, but we get nowhere. And
yeah, and their mantra is, well, we just don't have, there just aren't enough areas to do upland stormwater control. It's like, really? You open your eyes. Now, you know, I throw that out, you know, flippantly, and I understand this is not, it's not a quick solution, and it's not probably not going to be a cheap solution, but you know, DEP, they will try and tell us, I mean, they in fact say, well, we got to, this is an emergency, essentially. We got to stop the erosion. It's like, wait a minute, this erosion has been going on for 200 years. Yeah, it's greatly accelerated in the last, let's say from the 1950s here. This has been going on for decades and decades. There's no emergency. There's no, there's no immediate need to bring in heavy equipment and do a fix and say it's done. It's like, there's no urgency. They try and present it as such. But what the tough nut to crack is the private property, because while Montgomery County has a 15-foot easement on either side of a county road, and they don't need anyone's permission to go in and do one of these bioretentions like you shown on
the Green Streets program.
The Green Streets. So I've had discussions with them about this, and what they say is, and this one of the reasons why they're favoring the stream restorations. They say, well, it's they got to go in and they got to meet with every single homeowner and meet with the civic associations, and some people don't like these. And I say, tough noogies. I mean, this is not their property. It's when you see these, they're actually beautiful. So a lot of these places these houses don't even have a tulip in the front. And I understand their point is they do want to get buy-in from the homeowners, but it's certainly not required. And then the other issue is even that is probably not going to be enough to fix the problem. Is what about all the lawns? Just a little factoid: if lawns were a crop in Maryland by area, it would be the largest crop in Maryland. I mean, lawns are just hundreds of thousands of acres. And so what do you do about that? Well, we've got our the distinction between the Green Streets and the Rainscapes program. The Green Streets program does things like this. These 6 pictures here on the outside, that's in the county right of way. They don't need anybody's permission to do that. The Rainscapes program is like a rain garden on your private property, and you can, if you apply for it, you can get a partial rebate of the price. So I say, well, you're spending, the county spent for our last MS4 permit, they spent almost about $20 million on stream restorations. Why not go to people and say, we'll put a rain garden on your private property for free? And I'm not saying go into Potomac and do it for those folks. I live in Potomac. I'm not wealthy, but go to the low income people and do it, do it on a needs-based basis, and where people that are lower income go in and build these rain gardens, on their property for free, and use that $20 million. And by the way, another 20, the county has already estimated they're going to spend another $20 million just on the stream restoration part of the MS4 permit for the next 5 years.
That is, by the way, something that we're fixing to do in Prince George's County. We are starting a new residential resilience program, and it is going to have new practices that are decarbonized, and it's going to have different processes so that if you're in a well-off area, you can just work the rebate normally. You pay up front, you get your money back. In equity areas, it'll be different. You might get it entirely done, and we'll try to do blocks in a community on a neighborhood level at no charge, or you might have it for a reduced copay where you don't have to pay up front. So we're writing the regulations for that right now.
I see that 2 people have raised their hands. I know Peggy Dennis is one, and the other person is Karen. Peggy, why don't you go first, then Karen, you go after Peggy.
Right. About 10 years ago, when the people on my road were negotiating with DOT about getting the road built, we said that we would like to have rain gardens in the swales to hold the water back and let it infiltrate. And DOT's response was, rain gardens are structures. We don't have the money to maintain them, and we don't trust the property owners that adjoin the public right of way to maintain them either, so you cannot have them. We have enormous amounts of water coming down the swales. They destroy the swales little by little. And as far as I know, there's nothing we can do to stop that.
Whoever gave you that answer, that's I think you know how I'll characterize that, but I won't say it. This is one of the problems in the county, the siloing of departments. And Mark Elrich made a big deal. I mean, I really like Mark, and he made a big deal about needing to de-silo departments within the county. And this is a perfect example where, if DOT had been coordinating or communicating with DEP, Environmental Protection, DEP would have told this guy from DOT that it's DEP that maintains these bioretentions, and DEP has the funds to do it. So this guy from DOT didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah, so true, so true.
Yeah.
Karen?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, one, I think you're right, that I think all those areas along the side look gorgeous, and that I think a lot of people would be very happy to have them and not have to mow their lawns in those areas. I think another thing, this point about that you can get money to do rain gardens in your area, I found out about that somehow, and I took out 300 square feet in my backyard and got, I think it's $3 a square foot for it and stuff like that, which pretty much paid for pretty much all the cost of doing it and so forth. And I think if people knew that, or especially if you would do it in, for free in some areas, I could think there could be a lot more interest in it. And especially, as you say, in some of the lower income areas, which tend to be the denser areas and the more urban areas anyway, and so forth. So that some of the areas that really have the most impervious surfaces, it's hard to see why this isn't a win-win-win for everybody kind of proposition.
Well, that's a great story. And I have an acre, and I have not used a lawnmower in 25 years. I think I control about 98% of my runoff, and I have no grass. Most of and I actually did all my rainscaping and rain gardens before I even knew about the program. But the Rainscape program is a great program. It's so successful that they last year they ran out of money, and I think this year they've already run out of money, or at least put a pause on it. So yeah, so I know some of the groups, environmental groups, who commented about the budget this year, suggested funding the Rainscapes program to a much higher extent.
Before we go to Carol, Ken, what's the balance between the upland projects and the stream restoration projects in terms of the amount of money? Is it roughly equal, or is stream restoration a much larger number?
If you listen to DEP, the story I gave before, they will tell you that stream restorations are 4 times more expensive. I won't go through the whole scenario, but that's a bogus figure. I don't believe that based on the data they give you. Gaithersburg.
Use the number 20 million for stream restoration for, I guess, the next fiscal year. I mean, are they spending that much on rainscapes, rain gardens, permeable surfaces in neighborhoods?
Oh, good question. I don't know the total budget to meet the MS4 permit. I don't know.
And then let me ask you this question. So are there any advocates for upland stormwater control in the county council? Are some people more supportive than others?
I wish there were. I have not found my environmental hero yet. I've presented to every county council member or their staff. The only 2 direct that actually, of course, I invited the county council members, but the only 2 who actually I presented to were Craig Rice and Gabe Albornoz. And I was kind of, Craig Rice, he's not my David environmental hero, but I got to say that he listened, he paid attention, he asked some really good questions. His response, as I recall, and it's been about a year now, his response was something like, well, we ought to be able to, meet in the middle on this somewhere. I disagree with that, statement, but in any case, I presented to all the other county council, the staff people. I presented to Mark Elrich's office, Claire Isley, and then was there, and Dale Tibbetts, and Debbie Spielberg, and I don't actually so far, Mark seems to be more swayed by the cost aspect than the environmental aspects. The reason I say that is about 2 years ago now, a bunch of the environmental groups got together and we rented a bus, literally a bus, and we put Mark Elrich on it. We didn't put him on it. He walked on. Mark Elrich and Mayor Bridget.
Newsom, I was there. I was on that trip.
Okay, so Alan was there and a bunch of environmentalists and Mike Riley from Parks. And we stopped at the Falls Reach project, the one I showed you that had the pipe running through it. And Mark Elrich, and I said something effective, this is the poster child of the stream restoration project. This is absolutely not what we should be doing. And Mark Elrich turned to Doug Marshall, who was the DEP project manager of that project. And he said, could you have done control the same amount of stormwater upland for the same amount of money? And immediately Doug Marshall, oh, no, can't, it'd be a lot more expensive. He didn't throw out any figure. He said, oh, no, it'd be a lot more expensive. And kind of that was the end of it. So, I mean, unfortunately, you know, I like Mark. This is just one area where, well, I will tell you that I wrote him a letter and I formed an ad hoc group, and there were about 20 environmental organizations and some of the small villages and dozens and dozens of people. And we wrote Mark Elrich and Mike Riley of Parks and said, you know, you need to, the ask was not a ban, but a pause at that point. And Mark handed it off to Adam Ortiz. And so as Adam Ortiz wrote back on behalf of Mark, and you know, the standard line was, you know, that I keep on hearing is, well, stream restorations are just one tool in the toolkit. You know, it's one of many things that we do. It's like, no, it's like, that's like saying, that's like your surgeon saying that a chainsaw is, you know, one of the tools in his toolkit. Is no, you don't want that tool in your toolkit. And unfortunately, I mean, as you know, as county executive, Mark listens to his people, and he's got good people, and rightfully so for the most part. And Adam Ortiz is telling him, no, Mark, this is the way to go. So Adam Ortiz is gone now, and I mean, I like Adam Ortiz a lot too, but unfortunately now he's the EPA Region 3 director. So he's, you know, I agree with a lot of things that Adam stands for, but not stream restoration.
Well, I would just mention this before Carol asks her question or makes her comment, is that just looking at this picture, I think that this is an issue and a subject that, you know, many people, you know, throughout the Civic Federation would be interested in learning more about. And I think they'd like to see more rainscapes and more rain gardens and permeable surfaces in their neighborhoods. So hopefully we can work together to sort of drill down on a strategy and some advocacy to go to the county council to maybe shift the balance between the upland control and the stream restorations, because I spent a lot of times in the park and some of the stream I'm thinking about the Northwest branch, and they really are just stormwater conveyances, and they can't hold the increasing amount of stormwater. So it'd be nice to capture a good percentage of that on people's property before something happens. Carol?
So I just wanted to, I guess, to frame this in a slightly different way. And I say this with love because I have engineers going back in my family all the way to the 1820s. The engineers will always favor an engineering project. And to them, it always makes sense to have a large project, one large project, whether that's a big heaping pond or a stream restoration, as opposed to a lot of micro projects. Yep. They continually look at the cost benefit according to the credit that MDE gives them. And MDE, frankly, gives a very shamelessly low credit for conservation landscaping and for rain gardens. So that deck is stacked. Plus, they would always rather manage one big project than 14 little ones and have to expect 14 different projects and work with, you know, that's just the way they are. Now, I mentioned we're changing some things up in Prince George's, and one of the things that is allowing us to do that is as we move forward to implement our climate action plan. Because the stormwater engineers will always see these distributed practices as little things that don't bring them a lot of credit, and therefore they're just kind of icing on the cake, fluffy, feel-good things. But when we look at the same things through a climate lens, we're doing surface cooling, we're doing pollinator support, we're doing safe and healthy food systems, local food systems, we're adding edibles in our new program. And all of the benefits begin to be accounted for, and you still get stormwater benefits, but we're not living or dying on that amount of credit that the state gives them.
Yep.
And I will say that we are actually talking to the EP staff. They have sought us out to talk about what we're doing. And so we'll see.
Well, it sounds like one of the solutions is working with the state legislators to get Maryland MDE to change the amount of credits you get for those upland projects.
That would be a baby step. Yeah, that's Caroline is absolutely right. If you look at the credits awarded to stream restorations, it is much more favorable to do a stream restoration than a lot of these other projects.
And you're not going to be able to buck that, is my point, because everybody's, struggling to meet that and having consent decrees and whatnot. So you really have to flip that dynamic.
Yeah, and yeah, the environmental groups have historically gone to MDE, as have I, and asked that that the credit system be changed to favor non-stream restoration projects. Let me just the thing I was going to say is as Caroline said, I come at my statements about engineers with love too. My father was an engineer, and I actually graduated from a college of engineering, although I'm not an engineer. But yeah, when you're an engineer, everything looks like some place to run a bulldozer. And frankly, I was told that that these projects, the stream restoration projects, are a lot more profitable, just for every reason that Caroline said. It's in one small spot. You got all your equipment there. You have all your people there. You're not doing little projects and moving everything around. And it's you go in and it gets done relatively quickly, and you don't have to deal with the pesky landowner someone front yard. So yeah, I actually met with I've been contacting state legislators as well. I've done this presentation about 40 times now. And I met with several state legislators, and David Fraser Hidalgo. Hope I got that right.
Yes.
Hidalgo, yeah, Fraser Hidalgo. He actually set up a meeting with me with Ben Grumbles. Ben Grumbles is the head of MDE, Maryland Department of the Environment, and so David was there, and there were a handful of other state legislators from different counties. And basically, I didn't have much time, but I didn't give a presentation, but I kind of laid out the basic argument in about probably less than a minute. And the response back basically was, well, yeah, we understand there are a lot of issues with stream restorations, and we're gonna we need to make some changes. And he actually committed to giving the legislators on the call some kind of report or paper within 6 months. This was going back to last summer. So I need to follow up. I sent David a note saying, well, did you hear anything from Ben Grumbles? And I have not heard back from David yet, so I need to pursue that. But people. So environmentalists have gone, up to MDE and said, you need to re-swizzle this. And I mean, it's MDE reports to the governor, right? And I'm not given our governor is a big supporter of, expanding the Beltway and I-270. He's not an environmentalist in my mind. So
let me ask you this, and Ken, let's work on this and see if we can come up with a position. that we can bring to the Federation delegates on this and try to identify some advocates in the county council and in the General Assembly, because it's an important issue. Just going to ask you this. Stormwater, I mean, my backyard is terribly eroded from stormwater over the course of the last couple of years. These extreme rains have really done some terrible things. All the topsoil is gone, and it flows down to Wayne Avenue, down to Sligo Creek. Is it the nature of this beast that we're going to need to increase the capacity of the urban streams to just handle some of the stormwater so there isn't flooding in the neighborhoods, and it's an easier and faster solution to control the water, as opposed to sort of micro projects, the conservation projects that Carol was talking about is easier to do. Do they have to do these big projects because of the increasing volume of the storms?
Well, first of all, I'll answer the last part first and say that stream restorations are easy, you know, I'll say easier, faster, and cheaper. I mean, that's, but so the issue is, do you want to turn all of our streams into engineered stormwater conveyances and have everything look like, you know, Disneyland, or something out of in a Natureland theme park?
No, I don't think we want to, I don't think we want to do that, but is it the nature of the situation with increasing stormwater that you have to do that if you want to stop urban flooding, that you couldn't do enough micro projects to keep water on property to stop the urban flooding?
Well, DEP would say absolutely. DEP would say absolutely. I mean, that's what DEP would say. But the point is, so there are two things happening. Yeah, we're getting, you know, the theory of the global warming says that our area, Mid-Atlantic, is going to have more intense rainstorms. So we're getting hammered that way. The other way we're getting hammered is just more development and more impervious surfaces. So, you know, arguably, not arguably, but the county is asking our streams to be the whipping child for the sins of overdevelopment. And they're, you know, it's kind of, they're saying, well, they'll go in and they'll say, well, we fixed the stream, so therefore we're going to, you know, it's not a problem to allow more impervious surfaces and more development. So, yeah, you know, Alan, no one has, I don't think DEP can say there's been any watershed or sub-watershed that's been completely maxed out in terms of controlling the stormwater, you know, before it gets into the stream. It's just, they just can't say that. I mean, arguably, I mean, not arguably, certainly there are parts of the county that are more problematic than other. It's going to be easier to fix the problem, you know, as you get away from downtown Silver Spring or downtown Bethesda. But the kind of, there are two issues, I guess. One is meeting the MS4 permit, and the other is urban flooding. And I'd have to think a little, I mean, they have to meet the MS4 permit and they don't have to do it in stream restorations. So then the issue is, do you need to do stream restorations to control urban flooding? And I don't, you know, I don't know. I mean, that's like you really got to look at it on a, you know, a sub-watershed by sub, you know, a small area by small area basis. Where's the flooding been done and what could be done on a case-by-case basis?
Well, let's move to Bailey's part of tonight's program. Ken, thank you so much. That was an excellent PowerPoint presentation, and we learned so much. And we know it's an issue, and if there's a solution or a position that we could support that would help control stormwater going through neighborhoods. I just asked Bailey before you start talking, that street Bailey with the center section, does that get flooded during storms? Is there a river that goes through it?
Yes, in the intense storms, the street becomes a river on both sides, flowing. So in the foreground of that shot is the entrance to Rock Creek Park. There is a concrete sluice that goes through that, through the foreground. It has been hit with so much stormwater that the concrete sluice is actually exposed to the air and the water just flows by it. It flows through it, but it also flows by it. So there's a lot of sediment getting into Rock Creek at that entrance to the park.
Well, thank you for that explanation. Ken, thank you so much. And let's talk about it because you know I'm interested in this. Bailey, you're up next. And Carol, thank you so much for adding the Prince George's perspective. I keep thinking that there's some best practices from Prince George's that we could bring to Montgomery County, that we should be sharing this technology and this information that in many areas of the environment looks like you guys are way ahead of Montgomery County. So thank you for that, those suggestions and those comments. Bailey, I've got your PowerPoint presentation.
Let it rip.
Well, all right, let's see what we got here. And then what do I have to do? Wait. Here, Zoom meeting, share screen. Let's see what happens here. Oh, here we go. Okay, Bailey, you're on.
I'm waiting for the visual. There it is. All right. So this map of Maryland shows our position relative to the bay and the ocean. Much of the state is within the floodplain of the ocean, but concerted efforts by our state have the power to move others to act. Next slide. So this shows local governments and watersheds. There are numerous watersheds that course through our county. We have the power to make a difference in how our watersheds are treated and managed, as Ken has pointed out. And he lays bare the need to better control stormwater and take a hard look at development that doesn't require best management practices. So I would posit that permeable driveways should receive tax credits. Anything that you do on your property. So as a Chesapeake Bay landscape professional, which I had to go to school to get certified in it, homeowners can do small micro projects on their property to control stormwater. They're not inexpensive, but one of the cheapest things you can do is get rain barrels. Everybody could put a rain barrel at their downspout. I have 4 on my property. They store 385 gallons of water. That's 385 gallons that doesn't enter Rock Creek. Next slide. I'll make one last comment about Ken's presentation. Clean water grows on trees. Don't ever forget that. So I don't know how much news coverage this was given, but the IPC released a report at the end of February that was pretty alarming. Kind of straightened your hair if your hair is curly. This sets the stage for the situation in which we find ourselves. Next slide. So the New York Times did a pretty in-depth article on the IPCC report. These are experts from around the world. It is one of the most detailed looks yet at the threat that the climate crisis poses for us. And it isn't getting better anytime soon, which is why we in Maryland have an incredible opportunity to show what can be done with concerted effort with all parties involved. Next slide. Which brings us to Thrive. So, is it ready for prime time? And lots of debate occurred on this issue. Lots of debate is still occurring on this issue. Part of the part of the argument that wasn't addressed by the county was the missing middle housing market study. And without addressing the missing middle housing market study, they sort of shot themselves in the foot. Both of these documents are environmental documents because housing is a health issue. Over the course of our lives, we all spend the majority of our lives where we live, and it's important that they be healthy places. Next slide. These were comments submitted, and I apologize for throwing a big, long word slide at you. These were comments sent to Sydney Katz by a member of the Civic Federation. I am trying to pull out the nuggets. Yes, so we asked Sydney Katz and the County Council to make sure that a fiscal impact statement, an environmental impact statement, and a racial equity and social justice study would be completed before Thrive was given the go-ahead. I think that caused a stir. I don't know whether the social justice and racial equity study has ever been completed, but it raised a lot of eyebrows that it was not. Next slide. So another local activist pointed out that air quality standards in Silver Spring are failing miserably. And with more development, which is a likely place for this development envisioned in Thrive, if it doesn't require mandatory green features, how are they going to ensure that air quality standards are even kept in line with the federal regulations? Next slide.
Give me a second. It's not moving.
So, words on a page, but they're pretty important words because they're all happening in real time. So we evolved as a species while the globe was in a beneficial atmospheric state. There were certainly volcanic eruptions, natural disasters, tsunamis, floods, plagues, things that have been killing people for centuries. But we have unleashed an atmospheric powertrain of instability that is creating economic chaos, not only across the United States, but throughout the world. So there's some simple concepts wrapped up in all of these words. We're killing the planet's albedo, its ability to reflect sunlight. We're losing freshwater resources at alarming rates. In the news just recently, the dams on the Colorado River, I believe it's Lake Mead. Lake Mead has fallen to a level so low that they may not be able to generate hydroelectric power to the metropolises that it powers, such as Las Vegas, Phoenix, other large cities in the Southwest. And our ability to rebuild infrastructure, communities, and homes following weather-related disasters is becoming economically unsustainable, excuse me, economically unsustainable. Next slide.
Yeah, that's why you should be doing this.
So when we think about where we source our food, kelp has become a powerhouse locally in New England. It is striving to make inroads into other areas of the United States as a food product. It's in a lot of food already. It's in yogurt and a number of other prepared foods. But one of the incredible things about kelp is it requires no carbon inputs, just as shellfish require no carbon inputs. There's no fertilizer, there's no irrigation. They just exist in a state where man has the ability to harvest them without doing a lot of damage to the biosphere. And on a positive note, there are thousands of people around this county that understand what's at stake, and they're working vigorously and tirelessly to improve our resilience, educate the masses, and convince politicians to be bold. Next slide. So the next slide is just more groups. And anybody is able to join any of these groups. I don't think that they are exclusive. And the list, of course, is not exhaustive. And Stormwater Partners isn't on the list. It's one that I forgot, but we had worked with them for years, and they've done great work. Next slide. So here's some of the positive stories coming out of the Ag Reserve. So regenerative farming. If you rotate domesticated animals through small parcels of land, they actually help regenerate the land as opposed to overgrazing it. They actually heal the land. They don't just improve it, they heal the land. And next slide, we should be seeking out our local farmers as often as possible. Wherever it's economically feasible, we should be sourcing our local farmers markets at every opportunity. Next slide. So here's another report, December of 21, National Academies of Sciences. They came out with a report that said we need tracking and monitoring systems for plastics waste. So this is the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. This paragraph is from the consensus study report. It was fairly unequivocal. We need to start tracking this because it's killing close to 900 species of marine animals are being impacted by plastic waste. Next slide. So here's a bill that the Civic Federation supported, which would have created an extended producer responsibility bill within the Maryland General Assembly, which would have deterred the illegal dumping of used synthetic turf fields, infill, and set up guidelines for proper disposal. So we at the Civic Fed and others at the Safe Healthy Playing Fields Coalition tracked what they did with the Walter Johnson used field. And the only reason that people weren't indicted for crimes is because nobody is interested in prosecuting them. Next slide. So what happened to the extended producer responsibility bill? The spineless people at the Maryland General Assembly made sure it didn't pass. So their anti-science stance means that they support corporate welfare over stream health, human health, and the marine environment. Next slide. So these are some of the things that need to be made stronger. And I apologize for it being a list, but I had limited bandwidth to put it all together. We need to help people be strong. We need to help people see that the way forward is not in the status quo. Stronger laws against highly polluting nuisance products. So the county has done a pretty good job on that one. We've banned straws, styrofoam, polystyrene containers, single-use drink cups. I think we're now moving in the direction of banning all bags. The Thrive document can be made stronger so that it supports everyone's public health. Stronger housing laws give people better health, and extended producer responsibility laws. It's the third decade of the 21st century. It's time that we asked those producing the products that we consume to do more to keep them from killing other species indiscriminately, because they've never taken the time to instruct human beings on how toxic their products are if they're not properly disposed. Next slide. So let's have a conversation. And who would like to kick it off?
Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, really great presentation, Bailey. A lot for us to think about. On the topic of air quality, my understanding is that Montgomery County has one air quality monitoring station. Danila Sheveko alerted me to this.
Yes.
You know, and it's in the middle of a field surrounded by a forest.
Yeah.
And so that's very problematic. And apparently there are very inexpensive air quality monitors now. And these should be, we should be sprinkled up and down, Rockville Pike and every other, major artery we have to really get a handle on our air quality. The other thing I'll point out quickly is, we get these air quality alerts. It used to be, in the code red, orange, and whatever. It used to be that the air quality alerts were based on, let me put it this way. You would have a code red if one monitoring station went above the unhealthy level. And I think this needs to be investigated. At some point, the rules were changed where now they take an average of all the air quality monitoring stations across the whole metropolitan area, which now goes out to Leesburg. So, people could be suffocating in Bethesda or Silver Spring from bad air quality, and it will get swamped out by the good air quality out in Loudoun County or outer Fairfax. So it's really scandalous. And I don't know why it was changed. And I had contacted a couple reporters from the Post. No one seems to want to take up and investigate why that was changed. So leave it at that.
Carol?
I will just say to Ken's point that I did bring up the deployment of cheap air quality and temperature monitoring both to Adam and to Mark. And they seemed interested, but I guess it hasn't happened. I pointed to the example of the Throwing Shade program in Richmond. It's a good one to emulate. This is a really critical part of environmental justice screening and vulnerability for climate change. But what I raised my hand to say instead was I just wanted to share with people where we are on tree canopy in the county. And that is, because as we know from all the stuff we've been talking about tonight, that's crucially important. And the issue is that we have lost almost from 2013 to 2018, almost 9 square miles of tree canopy in the county. This is most of the loss, you'll be shocked to hear, occurred in urban and residential areas. So primarily tied to development. And the point I also need to make is that this is a net loss. Okay, this is how much we've lost after accounting for all the tree planting programs going on in the county. And, you know, I mean no disrespect. This is happening basically everywhere. But we just need to know what we're grappling with, that the tree planting programs are an order of magnitude lower than the tree loss. So this is the deficit that we're dealing with.
Did you say 9 square miles?
Yeah, it's amazing. And when you think about the tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of trees that have been removed for the purple line, it's really kind of scandalous. Over here in my part of Silver Spring along Wayne Avenue near the intersection with Dale Drive, we have a real heat island now because all the mature trees were cut down and they're only going to replace them with ornamentals. And it's really very, very noticeable how different in the temperature. Peggy Dennis.
Right. Bailey, you should add to your list the problem of deer overpopulation. I live across the road from the Gold Mine Loop section of the C&O Canal National Park. And when you go out there during the spring, summer, and autumn, you can literally see for hundreds and hundreds of feet looking across the forest because there is no forest understory. Any tree sapling that comes up, with the exception of pawpaws and some holly, will be eaten by the deer. So whenever mature trees die and fall, they are not being replaced. The National Park Service has finally given permission for our C&O Park to start culling the deer to decrease the deer herd sizes. But throughout our county, the Stream Valley parks in particular, and even small local community parks, the deer are ravaging anything that grows up about 5 feet. So emphasis on controlling the deer herds.
I think white-tailed deer have been identified as the greatest threat to the white oak population existing as a species in the future.
So right, yes.
Okay, let's go to Paul before we come back to Ken. Paul?
So I just want to make a couple comments to echo what some of the other people say. So we have a natural forested area in our neighborhood in Cherrywood. And in walking through there, the same thing that Peggy was noting, there are dead trees down everywhere and nothing growing. The only thing that grew in there last year was the Japanese stiltgrass, which is an invasive weed. And I too have been trying to get an answer to what's happened to our tree replacement program in Montgomery County. Last October, I pointed out, and I sent the county a picture of a diseased tree that actually had lots of large holes in it. It took them 4 months to come out and say, yep, that tree is gone. We'll be out in 15 to 18 months to take that tree down. And 5 years later, we'll grind the stump and then we'll replace the tree. And my response to them was, well, if the tree's got disease, it's just going to spread. There is a dozen trees in that same area along Hines Road that are already dead. And they didn't answer. And I wrote to Elrich and I said, listen, the fact that you're taking 18 months to replace a tree, that's not concern for climate change in our tree canopy. What's the deal? Can you put something in the budget? And they go, well, we'll keep that in mind. I wrote to Albernaz and he said, yeah, we'll kind of keep that in mind. And then most recently I wrote to Glass and I didn't even get a response from him. So yeah, it's fallen on deaf ears. They're talking about climate change, but they're not doing a damn thing.
Well, I'll take issue with that, Paul, because I know they put more money in the budget, both for replacement trees and for stump grinding. But as somebody pointed out, was it Ken? You know, the backlog for taking down trees, for replacing trees, and for stump grinding is years long, because there's tens of thousands of people who want that. We've been advocating for, you take down a street tree, you need to grind it and, you know, plant another one there as soon as possible. And doesn't look like there's any way they can keep up with the demand for this. So they actually have done some things, and lots of people are just not happy with the pace. Ken, before we go to you, let's go to Lewis.
So literally though, they stated they are 5 years behind.
Yep.
So to me, I didn't see, nobody got back and told me there was more money in the budget, but there's clearly not enough money in the budget. And if we're really worried about trees, and you've got ones that are diseased and ones around it that have the same disease with the holes in the trunk, you need to get those diseased trees out of there, or you're going to lose them all before you go in there to do the work. That's the crazy part.
Yeah, let me just say at this point, while I'm thinking about it, is I started talking to State Delegate Laura Charkoudian about doing a tree summit, which would, it was going to be really focused on our sort of East Silver Spring communities, but I can see a real need that we could do it as a civic fed program and try to involve communities from across the county. There are county programs to replace trees. There are state programs to replace trees, and I don't think there's much cooperation between them. Lewis?
Okay, yeah, good evening, everyone. Yeah, just kind of following up on what Paul just said. You know, it seems like the revenue from the stormwater fees is very ample, and maybe some of that money could be used to hire more, you know, stump grinders, and some of that, maybe some of that money could be transferred to the stump grinding budget. But okay, so also I just want to mention that regarding the stormwater program, you know, for residential properties, every property is given a tier number, 1 through 7, and then based on the amount of impervious area on your property. And but it's important to note that the highest charge you can get is tier 7, and there are many properties, particularly in Potomac, that literally have, I mean, just thousands and thousands, you know, tens of thousands of square feet of impervious areas, like extensive, like roadways and parking lots, if you will, on their properties, and they're capped at tier 7. They pay, you know, so on a per square foot basis, they actually pay much less in stormwater fee than somebody who lives, let's say, in a townhouse or or a smaller home or whatever. And I've mentioned that in the past to the stormwater people, and they say, well, it's just what the county council passed, you know, whatever. They don't want to address it, but it's an extremely unfair program. I mean, some of the people who's you know, some very well-known figures have extensive amounts of paving on their large properties, and also if I've looked at their water at their tax bills and looked at the overview, you know, at the calculations for their houses, and very, very few. In fact, I don't think I found any yet where those owners have done anything to reduce their stormwater charges. So it's like, well, they don't care, you know, they're paying about $300 some a year in stormwater charges, and it's like, you know, first of all, in my mind, they should be paying more because they're only paying that much because of the capping. And secondly, they're not even, it's like, they don't care, you know, they could probably turn substantial parts of their land into stormwater mitigation areas, but they're not doing that. And again, they could be getting credit for it too. They're not doing that. Meanwhile, I've turned part of my property into a, you know, stormwater management area, and so I'm getting about, I don't remember the exact number, but somewhere around 25% off my water quality protection bill. So that's my comments.
Very interesting. Ken Bawer?
Yeah, that's interesting, Lewis. That's something that ought to be looked into. In fact, you know, one way to go maybe would be to charge more for the water quality protection charge in areas that have more highly degraded stream valleys, and pair that with higher, you know, rebates for you know, controlling the stormwater. You know, you all know you can get a rebate on your water quality protection charge by controlling stormwater. You don't have to do it through the Rainscapes program, all you have to do is demonstrate that you're controlling the stormwater by removing lawn, by putting in but again, it's not, I think my bill was about $140. And I think I got about 50% off. I don't remember exactly what it was, but in any case, the other thing I was going to mention is, yeah, the county seems to be, in terms of trees, talking out of both sides of its mouth. You know, the climate action plan says we should save forests, and yet the stream restorations are destroying, you know, my original estimate was 1 million square feet. And then just based on the linear length that the county says they did. And then I said so many feet on either side. And then the county never, they didn't blink an eye. So next time I gave my presentation, I bumped it up to 2 million square feet. They still didn't blink an eye. So I know it's more than 2 million square feet. But the other thing is there are two kinds of, tree save programs. There's, as it were, the roadside trees, and then there's the forest conservation ordinance. Well, the forest conservation ordinance is going through a revision as we speak. Montgomery Planning is spearheading that, and the mantra they're going after is no net loss. Well, environmentally, that's just a hollow goal, because the way the program works is you can destroy, as an example, a builder can destroy an acre of forest, and then trees could be planted on the other side, no net loss. Well, you know,
my screen froze, so I didn't hear most of that. Liz Joyce, why don't we go to you, and then we'll come back to Carol.
Okay, I'm wondering, it is a truism among certain environmental groups that the proposed Thrive Montgomery 2050 and the densification that is supposed to follow will be good for the environment because it will reduce sprawl. But from what I hear from the scientists in my neighborhood in Silver Spring, is that because it requires first of all, there will be huge heat islands, which we already have. And secondly, there will be other devastation of the environment from this densification. And I'm wondering what our experts can tell us about that.
I think the conventional wisdom is that increasing densification is going to reduce the tree canopy, and it's going to increase impermeable surfaces. You know, both are outcomes that we don't want. And so there's going to have to be some strict controls on what you can do on the urban property, and I guess then how far you expand that from transit centers. Anybody want to talk about Thrive and environmental impacts?
Well, I'll make a comment. I wrote the response to Thrive for West Montgomery County Citizens Association. And one thing that was really outrageous was that this thing's gone through, I think, 3 iterations now. And each of the 2 follow-on iterations from the original one was just about a complete rewrite. And there was it was not presented in the form of a change document, right? And so the document was, I don't remember what it was, like I call it 100 pages. You know, I have no life, so I went through and read the whole darn thing. But it was just scandalous that they didn't present this thing as a change document to show you what changes were made. The first document had a whole section on the environment that was just pulled out, stripped out. It's been a while now since I thought about this, but my recollection is the Thrive 2050 was, to put it mildly, very light on environmental considerations, and the mantra that the thing appeared to have been written by a bunch of developers as a present wrapped up in a bow. And it was just a gift to developers, and the whole thing is just kind of scandalous, in my opinion.
I think a lot of us agree, and Civic Fed highlighted the lack of an environmental impact statement early on in this process. along with the racial equity and social justice piece and the fiscal impact. Carol?
Well, I would just add to that, that I think you do hear a lot of developer-funded environmental groups speaking in favor of densification. I think the real problem with that as a solution to everything is that it assumes that there is an endless, ever-expanding infrastructure to support it. And there's endless and ever-expanding natural carrying capacity of our ecosystem services. And we can't support what we have now. So that simply ain't true. So there's that. But Bailey had actually asked me to briefly explain. There are two triggers for tree conservation. And one is if your development is greater than 40,000 square feet, you have to do a forest conservation plan and look at what you're going to save. You do not have to sign it under penalty of perjury, unlike all the other development documents. And we have seen them lie, like the proverbial rugs. It is not a one-to-one replacement. It's a fairly complicated formula, and we would all be asleep by the time I explained it, but let me just say it's not a one-to-one. You have the option of paying fee in lieu. So instead of planting trees, you pay money. And that does fund other tree planting programs. So there, I mean, it does get used. But although it is supposed to prioritize planting on site, they count everything as tree planting. So if you put 3 itsy bitsy trees in the islands of your parking lot, you're allowed to count that as part of your mitigation tree planting. And the other thing people do is they buy tree banking. So, people up county sell them, they say, I'll keep my trees. And, you give me money to do that. And so that there's a whole lot of little dodges in there. Then in Montgomery County with our tree canopy law, properties, development actions that are between 5,000 square feet and 40,000 square feet. That's 5,000 square feet is when you have to get stormwater management permit, right? And for that, now our county tree canopy law clicks in. And that's a great thing. I mean, we don't have that yet in Prince George's, so this is one I can say Montgomery's up on. But again, it does not guarantee that you get the planting where you want it. And it recognizes that if you've cut down a really nice big tree, you really need to plant 3 or 4 trees. But it could and should go farther.
Jared, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Carol Ann.
Yeah, Thrive, I've been driving around recently in the county, not very far, and just doing a few things, like we drove to Brookside Gardens yesterday, and that. The amount of Teslas and all kind of Volts and Volkswagen electronic cars are high. None of Thrive seems to, even though it's supposed to be through 2050, none of Thrive seems to understand or even have any idea of what to do with all the electric cars we're going to have. And with the new proposals for only having 1 parking spot per person, why is Thrive missing anything about electric cars? Or I guess they don't count towards helping the environment.
Well, I think they're revisiting a lot of this in electric cars. Electrification is part of the climate action plan. They're doing something at schools and doing something with the county fleet. And even one of the candidates for county executive wants to give an electric car to every person in the county, as is one of his campaign planks. So I think they're reworking a lot of this, including green infrastructure. Is that right, Ken? That there's a bunch of people who are working on pushing a green infrastructure component to the Thrive 2050 plan. Do you know about that?
I don't know about that.
Yeah, so that would be Diane Cameron, Amanda Farber, I think Dolores Milmo, a couple of other people. Well, I want to
I have
thank,
one other piece. One of the things, I just went up to New York City where I discovered every street light in New York City is an LED bulb. I do not understand why all of Pepco maintained street lights are on wooden poles, why almost none of those are LED bulbs. And the entire school system, all their parking lots, from what I've observed at night, none of them are using LED bulbs. Can't we do some of the easy things, such as switching to LED bulbs? If New York City can do it in its entirety, or we reduce our electric consumption, but I don't think anyone really cares about reducing electric consumption in this county. Am I missing something?
yeah, I think you're wrong about that. And we should just ask the question about LEDs and whether or not, Pepco got responsible for, isn't that right? Pepco's got responsible for a lot of the street lamps. And
Yeah. So our community asked Pepco to make us a demonstration project almost 10 years ago for LED streetlights.
all right, well, I think we should just follow up with that.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank Bailey and Ken for magnificent presentations on various aspects of the environment in the county and nationally and globally. Before everybody drifts away, I wanted you all to consider a resolution. Since it wasn't in the newsletter, we're going to need 5 member associations, I think, Carol, and if that's right, to support consideration of this resolution. And it's basically a resolution calling on the county council to fully fund the office of the People's Council. Liz, did you find out anything else about that after we spoke today? You're still muted, Liz.
No, I did not. But I think that this is a matter of grave concern because, as we discussed this morning, it is a very small amount of money. And the Fed committee, as Harriet told us all, has voted to reject it. And this should be a very serious major campaign issue and something that all the candidates should be grilled about.
No, I agree. It's a red line. It's a red line for me. And so I want to read this draft resolution and see if the body will accept it. It's a lot like the letter that we sent to the county council and my testimony to the county council during the public hearings. So if you just indulge me, because we're going to call on all of our member associations to contact the county council members, ask their members to contact the county council, and we'll send out an action alert. And it goes something like this. And why don't I share the screen? Let's try that and see if
Wonderful idea.
that's going to that would be easier for me. Let's see.
Alan, you will send me a copy of that?
Absolutely, absolutely. You can now see this. Click. All right, so this is can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Good. So resolution of the Montgomery County Civic Federation, Inc. Whereas the Montgomery County Civic Federation believes that county residents are critically important stakeholders in the discussions and deliberations about land use planning in Montgomery County. And whereas the Montgomery County Civic Federation believes that county residents have not been adequately and appropriately involved in recent county decision-making about land use planning and policies in the county. And whereas during the February 14th, 2022 NCF general meeting, members voted to transmit a letter to the county council recommending that funding for the Office of the People's Council be restored in the upcoming FY23 operating budget. And whereas the Civic Federation believes that continuing to withhold funding for this agency is not in the public interest, and defunding the OPC has led to an imbalance of representation on issues related to land use, and whereas the Office of the People's Council serves to protect the public interest in land use hearings by promoting full and fair representation of relevant issues to achieve balanced administrative records, as well as providing technical assistance to residents so they can effectively participate in the county's land use process. And whereas reestablishing the OPC will help restore a balance of trust and integrity to the planning and public engagement process. And whereas many neighborhood jurisdictions have offices of the People's Council, whereas the Montgomery County Civic Federation strongly supports funding in the amount of $248,598 or 0.0039% of the total recommended budget for the Office of the People's Council as proposed. Therefore, be it resolved, Montgomery County Civic Federation calls upon the Montgomery County Council to approve the total amount of funding recommended by the county executive for the Office of the People's Council. And further be it resolved that the Civic Federation calls upon its member associations to request their members to contact the county council in support of full funding for the Office of the People's Council. So that is it in a nutshell. And I wonder if we can get.
Second the motion.
Let's get 5 people to do that representing different groups. And I think that's our threshold. So who else supports?
Second.
That's 2. West Montgomery?
Yeah, I can say yes for West Montgomery.
I can say yes for Park Hills. Peggy Dennis, well, you're West Montgomery. Kensington,
Kensington Heights.
Saratoga.
Jeff and Kira, do you think we can support it without getting the votes of the members? They might not be on the call still.
They're still on the.
You have
call.
5. You have the 5.
That's 5. So.
Okay, Alan, tell me again who we got.
West Montgomery.
And that's by Ken?
Regency Estates.
Regency Estates, Park Hills. Are you Sarasota?
Saratoga,
Saratoga?
Saratoga Village, neighbors.
Saratoga Village.
You can
And
add, you can add Parkwood. I'll say yes for Parkwood.
Carol voted and she's with Northwood Four Corners.
oh, good. So
Or 8.
we introduced this resolution and it's been supported by 5 members. Any discussion about it?
Badly needed.
Yeah, this really tracks the letter that we sent to the county council, almost very closely in some. And
So they don't want to do it because it gets in their Thrive underwear, right?
Yeah.
well, the people who voted against it were Reamer, Jawando, and Friedson. And so we're going to have a full-on assault on the rest of the county council and these members too, because it's only 240, what is it, 200? What is it?
$248,000.
Right, and it's, less than, 1%, way less than 1% of the budget. So there's really no excuse at all, right? And it's really kind of disgusting that they decided to just reject the county executive's proposal and the request that came in from evidently hundreds of, our neighbors and our members who were interested in seeing this funding restored. Is there any other discussion on it? Then hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, it passed unanimously. And that was good. Thank you all. Let's stop the share. There we are. So we're gonna soon conclude our meeting at about 9:30 we'll just sort of quickly go through any committee reports. Anybody have any committee reports? Anybody want to say anything about education? I think we had a good conversation about the environment. Legislation, do you want to say something about legislation, Peggy? There is a good article in our main newsletter about some of the success that we achieved in terms of our advocacy. I'm disappointed that the chain of custody did not pass, and under penalty of perjury did not pass. And Carol Ann, do you know why Ben Kramer pulled that back?
Well, it wasn't going to get out of committee, so that's why. But at least with this hearing, we did have Vaughn Stewart supported and participated in the hearing. But the main thing is that most legislators don't see why it's needed, and they don't understand it.
Bullshit.
Because they think that we're trying to solve a problem that's not happening.
Right.
Because they haven't had the experience of somebody getting a permit fraudulently to do something in your land.
Well, there should just be a rule that any document that you submit to a public authority should be under penalty of perjury, right? You shouldn't be making any
Well, and we did change the wording this time to make it, to the best of my knowledge, under penalty of perjury. So, I mean, the thing is you would have to know and intentionally lie. So that's a pretty damn hard bar to actually prosecute on. But again, we keep pointing out how many things citizens sign every time we pay our taxes, every time we get a permit to put up a little fence, anytime we get our absentee ballots. We do all of that under penalty of perjury. And yet a big developer can't.
It doesn't make any sense. So we'll
And I
revisit
will
that.
say, the SEC just lost a case where they sued somebody about lying about things. And the guy's defense was, everybody lies about stuff. And it really wasn't important lies. It was just kind of the bullshit lies that we all tell. So you got to
That
credit
is-
on that.
That is horrifying.
What I
right?
would take out of that and make the point is that we really need to launch a big campaign to get this done. It's not going to happen on the merits. And, we need to really create that groundswell.
Okay, moving on. I will forget some. Anybody have anything about public finance? Public safety? We have a real issue in public safety in the county where we don't have enough police officers. Many of them are eligible for retirement. We've had to raise their pay in a negotiation with the FOP recently. And people, first responders can't afford to live in the county. And so it's a situation which is getting worse rather than getting better. Just FYI. Public utilities. Our chairman of the public utilities is still here, who I would remind, he only has a few more weeks with the Star Cup, so enjoy it while you can.
Yeah, I was actually wondering about that. I figured it would be up about now. So,
At some point, somebody's going to come and get it and put somebody else's name on it. So,
all right, should I polish it up or anything?
yeah, I think it'll be fine. They'll polish it up at the trophy shop, but you're probably going to have to take the rum and Coke out of it or something like that.
Okay.
I want to offer a comment on public utilities. Due to the high price of natural gas, because of the Ukraine situation, we're going to see an increase in electric rates, and we're going to see an increase in natural gas rates for everyone over the next period of time until this Ukraine situation is satisfied.
Thanks for that, Jerry. We'll come to transportation in a second. Liz, anything on land use and planning you want to share?
Well, Thrive is still on hold, and I don't think they've even hired a consultant yet for the racial equity study. which is supposed to be submitted by the end of August. But that is still in, waiting to hire someone, which is, from our perspective, good because it will slow down the process. But what is going on is of great concern is that the council seems to be focused, and the planning board focusing on the downtown Silver Spring and adjacent communities plan, which is a plan to annex 106 acres of residential property in Woodside Park, East Silver Spring, and Seven Oaks, and turn it into commercial residential rather than residential areas. And the the council seems to be stonewalling about whether or not that's a good thing to do. Their excuse is, oh, well, we must have pedestrian safety, and unless we annex these 106 acres, we won't have it. And the process is already been in proceeding, even though there's been almost no public input into it. So this seems to be a Trojan horse to see if they can get something like Thrive through without passing Thrive. And it warrants our attention because it is another one of their tactics.
It seemed like the process to approve it is kind of accelerated. Is that?
I think so. And I'm very concerned about that. And they have a mantra, a set of communications messages about it, including what I just said, which are totally bogus and which are a reason for concern. And they have not, and Mark Elric has a wonderful document about this, why it's totally ridiculous to annex these areas, because they don't have an adequate plan for the development of downtown Silver Spring. And this is a huge deal because it is where the focus of so much of the activism on the part of the developers is going on. And it is just, this is where I live, and where you live, Alan. So it's a matter of great concern. And it is a symptom of the fact that the developers and their associates are just continuing to push the council and apparently heading toward getting what they want in a very important area.
Thank you for that report. That reminded me, and Ken, you mentioned this before, they've got the Forest Conservation Act, which was the revisions to that, which were recently passed by only really 3 members of the planning board. The planning board really is, 3 members at this point, not really representing the community in my estimation. So the fight to preserve the forest conservation, the important aspects of the forest conservation law is supposed to take place at the county council. So people are sort of rallying their forces to go to the county council and try to strengthen it. It was weakened by the planning board. So that will be an interesting thing. Jerry, to conclude, talk to us about transportation.
Well, they're continuing very slow work on the Purple Line. They claim they're going to start more. It's only about 4.5 years behind schedule and probably only about $2 billion at the moment over the original budget. And this is going to basically eat up all the transportation money the county has for anything else other than the Purple Line. And I wish anyone in the area good luck as they plan on doing all this work, because the county and these contractors take an extremely long amount of time and keep blocking lanes throughout the area where the project is going on. And other than that, I had my brief article in the newsletter, which anyone could read about how traffic has gotten actually heavier than it was pre-COVID.
Thank you for that. Anybody else have anything else for the good of the order as we conclude? Our next meeting in June, we hope, will be the awards program. Well, we will award the Wayne Goldstein Award, the Star Cup, and the Sentinel Award to deserving individuals and groups. So stay tuned for that. We have some decisions to make about elections. not prepared to talk about them right now. If anybody has anything they'd like to include in our newsletter, which comes out every month, please send it to one of the officers and we will include it as appropriate. Anybody have anything else they want to say this evening? Again, thanks to Bailey Condrey and to Ken Bawer. And Ken, let's talk about some of these things because we'd like to see more rainscaping and keeping water on people's property.
Happy to come out and take a look at your backyard. You said you was washing away. Maybe I could give you some ideas.
I've got a Google album I'll send you. You can check that out. So thank you, everybody. This concludes the May meeting of the Civic Federation. Take care and thank you for supporting the resolution.
Good night, everybody.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Second.
And all those in favor. See you guys.
Aye.
Aye.